What's up folks, Kuro the Artist here, and welcome back to another Ben 10 breakdown. When doing these breakdowns, it's always exciting when we get to one of these kind of episodes. You know, they're like the episode. The ones that have such a big legacy. Be it they introduce a new concept, have a really great plot line, or just a niche little aspect that makes this one fun and unique. And this one has all three. To conclude the Ultimate Greg arc, the trio teams up with Ben's younger self from the classic series, who was accidentally misplaced through time, and ends up suggesting the key to stop Ultimate Greg from absorbing the power of a baby celestial sapien.
You can absorb my Omnitrix like you did before. You'll have all my powers.
This is one of the rare times that Dwayne McDuffie wrote an episode that wasn't a season opener or finale, although this certainly feels like one. He also said on his website that he wanted to bring young Ben back during season 1, but they didn't have the budget for the story they wanted to do. What kind of story do you think that would have been? Let me know your speculations below. Anyways, this episode needs no further introduction. Let's just jump right into it. So if this is your first breakdown and you're curious about how my rating system works, there's a detailed description down below, along with a link to all my previous breakdowns, but by all means watch this one first. I'm sure you'll still enjoy it. But before we begin, I want to say I completed my second playthrough of the Ben 10 game series I'm doing over on Twitch. You can watch the full playthrough over on our second channel, The Rust Bucket, right now, and make sure to follow us on Twitch so you don't miss out on the next one. I've been playing through all the games every Tuesday at 2 p.m. EST, and it's been a blast chatting with y'all, and I hope to see you again in the next one. Also, we reached our goal of 225 patrons. That means the first 2 minutes of the next and beyond episode, Ledger Domain, is available over on Patreon for tier 1 starting at $1. You can go watch that right now, along with a backlog of a bunch of previous updates from the past few years. So go join our Patreon if you have a chance. Now let's jump into the episode. On November 12th, 2010, Dwayne McDuffie gave us the Forge of Creation. After failing to stop Ultimate Greg from getting all the pieces of the Map of Infinity, the trio have no choice but to tackle him head on right in the Forge of Creation. But a time travel accident has classic Ben join them in the fight, and they all arrive at the Forge for one final showdown against the Osmosian Tyrant.
You have failed!
Right off the bat, we got Azimuth throwing shade. We're back in his super empty lab. Seriously, what's this man doing in this room the whole time? There's nothing in here.
4 opportunities to stop Agrigor.
He's got to show his whole hand because he only has 4 fingers to begin with.
Each time he bested you.
While you're doing the recap,
It's a pretty good truck in right here. They're all on different layers to add some depth. Azimuth even gets darker and more out of focus the closer he gets to the camera.
you might want to mention all the good we did while we were chasing him.
Well, nothing on McDilty. Deep, he did save the whole planet, so I'll give him that. He also assisted Charmcaster in taking out Adwaita, even though it was really Greg who gets that win. And Perplexihedron... So 1.5 out of 4. It's something, but you really did kind of screw this up, Ben.
Agrigor obtained the means to travel to the Forge of Creation.
Kind of forgot how this works, but... So it's the map itself that unlocks the chrono-randomization barrier that allows you to pass through the Forge? Because Paradox said he created the barrier too. So it's like the map is a key to the barrier. But before that, does that mean anybody could just get to the Forge if they can get outside their universe? I mean, as if that's even simple to begin with.
The greatest power in the universe. I don't know where it is. That was the whole point of hiding it.
Hiding the Forge, or hiding the map pieces? The way this is phrased is as if they took the entire Forge of Creation and put it somewhere else, which I guess was Celestial Sapien powers. Who's to say that isn't what they did? Because Azimuth keeps referring to the Forge of Creation's power as the highest power in the universe, even though in this very episode we see that it's not in the universe. So maybe Paradox somehow took the Forge of Creation and placed it outside of our universe, and it could have been birthed from our universe to begin with? A lot of jumping through hoops to make that work, but it does kind of line up with what they're saying. It also lines up with Alien X's original home planet, Zvezda. Am I saying that right? Which is described as a bunch of gases and energy, which is what the Forge looks like. So it's looking like a case could be made that the Forge of Creation was taken from our universe, placed outside of the universe, and then protected by the chrono randomization barrier, which can only be unlocked with the keys of the Map of Infinity. I'm not saying I buy it. I'm not saying that's true. Not even saying I like that theory, but it's possible.
All is lost.
That's exactly what Laura Lynn said too.
All is lost.
I've got a transformation that can find the Forge of Creation and stop Agrigor.
which is a crazy coincidence, because they still don't know that the Forge of Creation is where Alien X comes from. So Ben just decides to go Alien X right now, which is pretty hype. Like, this was some crazy shit when I first saw this.
I need the keys.
And this made it much more dramatic too. The fact that this transformation is literally locked away. So even if Ben wanted to, he couldn't go Alien X without Gwen or Kevin present, which handicaps the alien even more, but also makes perfect sense for these reasons.
Didn't want Albedo to ever get access to this one.
Or worse, to accidentally change into it in the middle of a fight.
Really good thinking there, folks. Ah, so dope. I feel like this is one of those things that's hyped even more because there was no build up to this. Like, this is one of those things that I feel like could be a bit too random to accept, but I like that there was no allusion to this, so that they just drop it on you right here.
Transformation lockout overridden.
In a really cool sequence where we see the holographic chain shoot into the air, and we close in on the chain to watch it split and then turn into DNA. Man, whoever came up with this, I'm loving it. And I'm so glad it's animated so well too, to complement the idea.
Transformation 10 now available.
And he's called Transformation 10 too, giving it two meanings, Alien X, and then X being the Roman numeral 10. And he gets his own transformation sequence. This episode decided to just crank the hype right up to 11 within the first minute. And this is a very different kind of transformation. It's like we're seeing Ben become one with the universe as he goes from here to here. And then when we zoom in, that's Galvin Mark II right there. It took me a while to get that. Yeah, it's giving off the impression he's like merging with reality or something. And we have a default star pattern that when we zoom in, you can see the second background start to fade in right here too. Because if they didn't swap out the backgrounds, these stars would be too big. But it actually zooms into the same background of itself. Like, look at these two stars. Then we zoom in, and there they are again. In fact, when I flip between the two shots, it's even more clear. But the transition is seamless. They did a really good job with that. And Galvin Mark II is getting consumed with energy. So hype. And he changes with like a celestial aura, very reminiscent of Paradox, instead of the typical green flash that we get. Kevin's out here backing the fuck up, and he's floating as well.
Alien X!
That just sounds like three of Yuri. One speaking high, one speaking low, and then one maybe pitch shifted.
Alien X! Alien X can do anything.
Only if Ben can convince Alien X to cooperate.
I also think it's smart to have Ben use Alien X right at the beginning to sort of re-explain his powers for the context of this episode to make sense.
Motion to greet our honored guest.
So Serena was originally voiced by Vicki Lewis, who has now been replaced by Tara Strong, which makes sense. She's only in it for a little bit, and Tara's already in this episode. And with the inflictions they give for Serena, they pretty much sound similar.
I feel sorrow. Billions of lives will be lost. Vengeance is not our way.
Bellicus, who was originally voiced by Kevin Conroy, is now voiced by Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Bellicus, the voice of rage and aggression. We don't have to do anything unless we both agree.
Again, not too much of a vocal difference there with this performance. And it's been so long in between the episodes, there's not enough room for immediate comparison.
Motion to ignore him for 1,000 years, at which point we set him on fire for a second 1,000 years.
It's probably my favorite Bellicus line. They are not happy with Ben not using Alien X.
I know he hurt your feelings when he abandoned us.
How long ago do you think Ben abandoned Alien X? Because I've always been under the impression that he hasn't been used ever since his first appearance. But he was on that smoothie cup, and that's a very accurate representation of him for people who have never seen or maybe even heard of Alien X. And you could argue Ben probably used him at least one more time when doing the whole key rigging thing with the Ultimatrix, but his first appearance could very well be the last time that Ben used him.
I need your power to save.
I don't care.
It does kind of suck for them that Ben only shows up when he needs their help. These two backgrounds are the same too, with the stars just shifted.
The whole universe is at stake.
And Ben is floating by slowly growing and shrinking, not just shifting up and down, since he's at an angle right now. It's a subtle but effective attention to detail.
Hello!
And of course, Professor Paradox is there. I go into a lot of detail about the logistics of this in my 400 subscriber special talking about Alien X, but simply put, I have this constant debate with myself whether or not this is a physical place or just a visual representation for the audience. And there's facts that support both scenarios, but they can't both be true. Although right here, Dwayne said that Paradox can go anywhere in space and time, and this counts, supporting that it is a physical space. But there's still evidence against this as well.
You will not convince Serena and Bellicus to help you. Not today.
Yep, gotta wait till Omniverse for that.
Time Walker, you are not welcome here.
And of course, Paradox gets himself into some conflict. Also, I find it interesting that Ben is floating, but Paradox is standing. The same is said for this shot too. A subtle way of showing Paradox is more anchored into these realities because of his experience and power.
Punish Paradox for ignoring the treaty between him and the celestial sapiens.
Our first mention of this potential greater collection of multiversal lawmakers, which at times is hinted to exist, but never really comes up. Closest we get is Universe v. Tennyson, but I don't think it's the same thing.
I'm not supposed to go within 500 light years of them.
Now, I forgot who made this theory. If y'all know, or if it's you, please let me know down below. But someone suggested that the reason Paradox is banished by the Celestial Sapiens is because it was Paradox who stole the DNA sample to give to Azimuth to add the Celestial Sapiens to the Omnitrix. And I really like that theory. So I'm gonna go with that in my headcanon. I feel bad, I don't remember who came up with that, but I support it.
Time to leave.
Made me change back?
God, Paradox is so fucking cool. And again, Ben transforms using Paradox's visual effects rather than his typical green flash. And in this shot, you get a nice size comparison between Ben and Alien X.
Forge of creation. I'm here to take you there.
He's definitely the most powerful character in all of Ben 10, and I still think he's low-key more powerful than a Celestial Sapien.
But I'm the one who hid it.
I like the room echo they give these characters too, because the room is so goddamn empty.
You told me of his grand destiny, that he was the legendary being who will someday...
See, that can mean anything. Ben's gonna go on to save the universe a handful of times, but it seems like Azimuth is speaking of one event in particular. So what could he have done that would be more grandiose than saving the universe? Who knows, man? Saving the multiverse?
Forge of creation is where celestial sapiens like Alien X are born.
Man couldn't have said that a handful of episodes ago.
It's not the map, Gwen. He's going to the Forge of Creation.
He will go to the Forge of creation.
Which you still won't tell us anything about.
It is beyond your comprehension.
See, it's not that hard, Azimuth, come on. In fact, knowing that, Ben probably would have gone Alien X much earlier than this. Who am I kidding? No, he wouldn't have. He's very stubborn about using Alien X.
Aggregor intends to absorb the abilities of a newborn celestial sapient. He will become omnipotent.
Well, omnipotence in the context of the Ben 10 universe.
If we're going to get there in time, we'll have to have already left.
Is he gonna take them back in time? Or does this mean that they're late? Wow, looks like they teleported back to Alien Force.
Where are we?
You see that faint glow? It's the universe.
This could either mean that the Ben 10 universe is finite and not as infinite as we think with our own universe, or it's somehow this just ambiguous representation, and the universe is like Pac-Man, where you reach the edge and then teleport to the other side. Also, I like that he's talking through his reflection. You even see Ben back there, and the fingers line up. A lot of really neat shots in this episode.
We're in the space beyond.
Then what's that?
That is the next universe over.
So they're all outside of the universe right now. That's freaking nuts. It's crazy that the ship is even able to move. And also, Paradox has yet to give them the survival protection assets. So if they open these windows, they're fucked.
I still don't see anything.
That's because it's enclosed by a chronal randomization barrier.
Which we've heard mentioned in 2 episodes prior.
I could tell you not to lean against the chronal randomization barrier, but I know you won't pay attention.
Paradox. Why doesn't he help?
He already has. He erected a chronal randomization barrier.
So this is already set up pretty nicely.
It is out of sync with all time.
Which makes sense, because Alien X's mind is out of sync with time as well.
Unless, of course, you're me.
This man's frickin' multiversal Willy Wonka. See, he could just do this now, so he can go anywhere in time and space. He built the Perplexohedron, moved the Forge, and then trapped it in a barrier, and now can just do shit like this. All because he accidentally fell in a time machine. Paradox is a fucking G. Here you can see that nebulous cloud that I pointed out in the Alien X video. It's called the Pillars of Creation. Sound familiar?
Why don't you just like snap your fingers or something? And...
You could go back in time and stop Aggregor before he gets the map.
I love that they're acknowledging all of this. Last time they said if Paradox transports himself into the same area too many times, it starts tearing apart reality. And even though in the Forge of Creation, I don't believe that would be a factor, it still needs to be the trio to carry out this legacy, because these experiences need to happen.
There are places I cannot go and things I cannot do.
I feel like it's out of respect for the multiversal law, though. He can do all of this stuff. It's clear that he'd be able to do it anyways. In fact, at the end of the episode, he ends up in the Forge no matter what. So he's telling them it's not his place to make these events unfold, not that he literally can't go into the Forge.
And arranged for life support. While inside, you will not need air, nor will you feel discomfort from heat or cold.
And now he's altering their bodies, too. He doesn't just travel through time and space, he manipulates it. He went from time traveler to full-on reality warper.
Then we can't be killed?
You most certainly can.
Such a good exchange.
Found the nebula.
Going into the cosmic belly button. Also, this nebula looks very different between these 2 shots. Here it kind of looks like the other universe, but zoomed in really close. But right now it's just a portal. Now they're going through the void.
Something hit us.
And where the fuck did these things come from? There is literally nowhere for them to hide. And Greg's ship is destroyed. Is he carrying them on his back? He's like, alright gang, we're gonna head out to the forge. Everybody jump into my arms. This makes no fucking sense. How? Also, I keep forgetting how giant these things are. Love how this one's crawling up on the roof. Gwen blows one of their heads off. I like whenever you get to see inside of the robots. Stuck in the barrier wall. To be fair, I don't know how Kevin could have avoided this. You literally can't see a wall. Right here, there's a subtle fade of blue, revealing the wall ever so slightly. About time, Ben. That's a cool move, just seeing him full-on brawl at them instead of using his air attacks. Although when his feet start coming out, they come out as flaps similar to his arms. Yeah, turtle slap. And of course Gwen's able to resist this just by standing there. I do like the distortion they put on her in the background, show the wind manipulating them. And throws them into the abyss, never to be seen again.
We're stuck.
Bet he really wishes he had upgrade right now. So in this shot, Kevin's very far from the edge of the plane. Then we zoom in and he's right there. Also, you really think you're gonna unstuck the plane with a friggin' crowbar, dude? You're not even using your super strength right now.
How about I just turn into something strong enough to shove it through?
They're trying to go through the barrier, not get out of the barrier? Alright.
Way bigger.
Ben, don't forget what Paradox told you.
I could tell you not to lean against the chronal randomization barrier, but I know you won't pay attention.
Whoa, Ben!
Motherfucker. Mana whip. Oh, he fell pretty deep into there. What do you think he saw when he was over there? Did he get transported back into the past?
I do see something moving in there.
Aw shit, here it comes.
Not something, someone.
Yes. And they brought back the sci-fi musical sting. It's not quite the same melody, but it's very classic Ben feeling.
Someone. I'm Ben Tennyson.
And Tara's still in her prime voicing Ben. It's been a while since she's had to record classic Ben 10, but I feel like lately whenever she does Ben's voice, it's much higher and more akin to Timmy Turner.
Hello, Calvin. It's me, Ben 10.
But I want friends who like me for who I am, not what I have.
Whereas Ben's voice is much deeper and closer to her performance as Mac's older brother in Foster's home.
Give me those stupid, this is what we do to flowers!
I'm Ben Tennyson.
So authentic, they even included the wrong button error. Now, I've seen young Ben in this episode so much, it doesn't faze me anymore, but when I first saw this, I was very off-put with how they drew his head. Because as I've mentioned in previous breakdowns, we've seen that they're capable of drawing young Ben based on the photos hanging up around the wall. So this change-up, I'm not buying as an art style thing. For some reason, they intentionally changed him to look more like this. And it just, I don't know. I don't really like it.
Do I know you? You look sort of familiar.
It seems obvious to us, but if you were a 10-year-old, would you really be able to recognize a teenage version of you? I feel like we all want to say yes, but if it came down to it, if I was 10 years old and like, I don't know, I was walking down the street and I literally saw my 16-year-old self, I probably wouldn't be able to tell, at least not immediately.
First day with your new lips?
Now that's a classic Ben line. Classic Ben's characterization is kind of hit or miss throughout this whole episode, but there's some bits of dialogue I'm like, yup, that's classic Ben. Tara's performance definitely helps with it too.
There's been some sort of time travel accident.
That's how you want to play it?
Yep, stubborn as ever. Really good running animation too. Oh, that's crazy. He's got some insane arm and grip strength there. Average 10-year-old's about 70-ish pounds. Not crazy heavy, but to just be able to catch 70 pounds in motion and then hang it easily like this, that's kind of funny to think about.
Don't make me hurt you, okay?
Ow!
He headbutt himself.
Not smart, Kevin. He thinks you're still evil. It's hero time!
Yes, a classic Ben hero time. But of course they didn't animate the dial correctly. Those are some authentically classic sound effects though. They got that right. And they added little glows to Ben's Omnitrix. There's some effort there. I like it. And you know, I admire them going through the effort to redraw the classic series transformation sequence. But it just does not compare. Although, to be fair, the classic transformations were drawn with the intention to be reused constantly, whereas this shot's a one and done, so I can see why they didn't want to, like, put all the specifications into making it perfect. Even Omniverse got pretty lazy with it, too.
Oh, yeah.
And they did it twice. Look at that, they even added in the molten fire texture from the classic series. Background doesn't look that great though. And why won't they just put the slits in his eyes? Come on. Omnitrix is also green, but I guess that's just an art style thing. I like that they at least made the sides silver. But it's great that the first alien we get is Heat Blast. They're really banking on that nostalgia, and it's working, but it looks like they didn't keep up the fire texture.
Little juvenile delinquent, try and set me on fire?
Kevin reaches down with his hands, but he absorbs with his hands and his feet. I guess absorbing from 4 limbs instead of 2 makes him armor up much faster.
I've got a better idea.
Heat Blast sounds pretty dope here too. I don't get why they changed his voice in Ultimate Alien later on.
Guess I shouldn't be surprised to see a Milgax can keep a bad man down.
They also don't animate him with the solid black fragments like they do with all Pyro Knights in UAF and OV, I guess just to make sure he really looks like his classic self. The animation itself here is all really good though. Look at that backflip. But it's the special effects and the overall character design. It's just, compared to classic, it's hard to live up to. That series is so beautiful, and here it just looks a little bit flat, you know? But see, this whole sequence does look pretty good though. Although I wish we got some crazy heat blast attacks out here. Maybe his fire attacks aren't as powerful out here because he doesn't have any oxygen to work with. Come to think of it, he doesn't have the life preservation assets that Paradox gave them. How is he surviving out here? Maybe passing through the barrier automatically gives them to you? Also, his Omnitrix is drawn very differently than how it was before. This looks like they're drawing it with the intentions to color it how they do Teen Ben's Omnitrix.
Who's next?
I still think they could have gotten away with giving him the dark shadow fragments on him, but this really doesn't look bad. You know, just add some slits in the eyes and some of that magma texture and he'd look pretty much like how he does in Classic.
Big chill.
It's the first time we get NRG too, and this is a genuine mistransformation because you see Big Chill's hologram.
I'll break something for ya.
Ah, he sounds so good. Dee's doing a really good job at giving Heat Blast a voice in this episode, since they couldn't get Steve back for this.
Don't even think about it, freak.
I'll break something for ya.
But man, he is high up. He must have flown. And boom, Young Ben is fucking murking the whole trio right now. Granted, they're all probably holding back, but this shows that he can at least put up a decent fight.
Not as dangerous as me.
That's a bit disappointing though. I wish we got a red flash and the timeout sound effect. I would try to key it to give it a red flash, but with the green ship in there too, the key would affect both the ship and the flash. Well, I don't know. I'm gonna give it a shot. Yeah, it does affect the ship. They're too close. I would need the layers to be separate to begin with. Or maybe I could just add some keyframes so it only turns red for a second. U key here and make it 0. No, those in-betweens. It looks pretty pixely. It's better than nothing. Maybe throw a classic Ben sound effect in there.
Not as dangerous as me.
Ugh, but the blinking, I'd need that too. Alright, fuck it, I'm already this deep into it. Here's what we'll do. We'll duplicate that layer, we'll add on the tint, and then make a mask around Ben's Omnitrix. Can't do that with the flash though, because the lines pass through everything too much. I'll just add a keyframe every time the beep is strong.
Not as...
And then turn it to 0 whenever it's in between. Okay, let's try that.
Not as dangerous as me.
Oh, fuck, the mask moves. Hold on. Okay, 3rd time's the charm. Just need to make sure that the mask path stays on Ben's Omnitrix dial. How about now?
Not as dangerous as me.
It's as good as it's gonna get. Makes me want to go through the episode and try to classic up the art style a bit. Maybe key in some magma for the yellow too. Turning Heat Blast's rocks black would be tricky though, because these reds are so close. I'd have to have the sensitivity way down. Maybe I can do that? Oh, look at that. Okay. And turn it down. Yo, that was so much easier than I thought it would be. There we go, that's pretty cool. Key in a magma texture on the yellow.
Be careful, Ben. It's dangerous out here.
Not as dangerous as me.
I can see that.
Oh, this is gonna be becoming a whole thing now though.
You must know who I am. Dweeb.
He says it so sincerely too. Can't even call her Gwen. He's like, it's the dweeb.
What happened to you?
Puberty.
So Classic Ben has been to the future twice now. Except the first time we were following Classic Ben as the main character. Now we're following Teen Ben as the main character.
I'm you.
I would never turn into anything that lame.
If you think that's bad.
6 years later.
You're off by a number there, buddy.
Kevin 11 is a good guy now.
Oh, maybe you spoke too soon, Ben.
I got my eye on you.
Quaking in my boots, Pipsqueak.
I'm loving these interactions so far. Like, this whole episode definitely should have been a two-parter, just so we get more classic Ben with the trio. It was halfway through the episode before he even showed up. All the Galvin Mark II stuff and Alien X things are good. Paradox explaining the multiverse. But this whole thing with the minions, I would just cut all of that and give more time for young Ben.
Maybe if I touch the time field again,
It'll make a 21-year-old you to add to the set.
Hey, a 21-year-old Ben, wouldn't that be something?
Awesome!
Thank you, Ben.
we're still stuck.
I'm all recharged.
That was fast. He did recharge fast sometimes, though. So Wildmutt pretty much looks exactly the same, especially this frame. Although this strap is supposed to be white, and he doesn't have the black lips. So I think they did a really good job with Wildmutt. Could have used some detailing on the inside of his mouth, though. The black abyss doesn't really work for him, because he doesn't have any eyes or anything to balance out his face, so we're so focused on his mouth. And when we don't see inside it, it does look kind of cheap. But yeah, the way they draw the hands and the bulges of his knuckles, even his midsection, like they did a pretty good job on Wildmutt. I love that. It's just like Ben 10,000, except he's the one doing it instead of getting it done to him.
If this is your fight, it's my fight too.
Well then, this might help. Hey!
How'd you do that?
You should always keep it locked.
I love that line too, because it always seems like if you could just touch the Omnitrix to transform, then anybody can transform Ben. He could probably like fall really hard on the side of the road or something and transform. So keeping it locked is good preservation for something like that. This episode's really good at explaining all the failsafes behind the lore of Ben 10, like keeping the Omnitrix locked and keeping Alien X hidden behind keys. These are realistic precautions that Ben would need to take with his device. If only these things leached their way into other episodes though, because as we see in Omniverse, either Ben doesn't keep it locked anymore, or he doesn't know how to with the new Omnitrix.
Vampire?
You took a bite out of my ship.
You can always go out and steal another one.
Man, yeah, they're really nailing classic Ben right now.
Did I really used to be that obnoxious?
Used to be?
It's another great line. Ben has significantly matured since being that version of him, but he definitely slips into that persona sometimes. All really depends on who's writing him. Here's the other side of the nebula. Now this shit looks awesome. Lots of wavy, colorful, moving parts. This looks amazing to me. This one shot must have taken a lot of effort to put together. This one too, as we fade past the clouds. Here's all the Alien X's just floating around. Now, we've seen many a crowd in Ben 10 where all of the aliens look exactly the same. With Celestial Sapiens, I feel like they're the one species it makes sense for them to do so, but the artist in me still wishes there was more diversity between the Celestial Sapiens. I like what Omniverse was doing by giving them armor to distinguish themselves, but multiversal gods needing to wear armor sounds kind of ridiculous to me. So I'd like it if they were more diverse with like different alien aspects, like if they each had like their own pattern of horns or like different growths and stuff, or they can be like different shapes entirely, like a Celestial Sapien friggin' tiger or something, or a Celestial Sapien squid. But I'm fine with this. Like, I'm really not bothered by it. But most other species in UAF, yeah, definitely needs more diversity. But the Celestial Sapiens, I guess you could get away with it. Can you imagine seeing that in real life? That would be mind-blowing. And they're all on different layers too, making the effect look much more 3D. Even the background is warping. These are the kind of shots that I always try to do in And Beyond. And they're all gigantic too. It'd be crazy to see Ben get this big as a Celestial Sapien.
Celestial Sapiens spend almost all of their time debating.
They do have a couple differences with Ben though, aside from size. Like the hands are black instead of white, and they have actual feet with toes and such. Alien X just has the merged foot. I like it with toes though. Like if you're gonna do the whole humanoid thing, just go all out.
They could just blink and we'd be gone.
If you really try to put yourself in the perspective of these characters right now, if you were just like outside of the universe looking out the window and seeing all these gods floating in this colorful nebula, and knowing that if any one of them willed it, they could just blink you out of existence, I would be fucking terrified. Also nice to see that they're still drawing the ship with the hole in it for consistency.
We don't want to disturb them.
How can we breathe with no air?
More like, how can you breathe with no air?
Where's Grandpa Max?
Oh boy, that's a whole thing. I like that he's concerned about Grandpa though.
If this is the future, does everybody have jetpacks?
Kinda. I mean, Grandpa Max had a jetpack in his own time, and all the plumber uniforms can be equipped with jetpacks. But either way, all three of them can fly in their own way as well.
Who won the last 5 World Series?
A nod to Ben's fascination with baseball. Also, I was having a discussion with some people about the nature of Ben's shirt, and it was suggested that that Ben's t-shirt is actually a baseball shirt, which does make sense since Ben likes baseball a lot, or at least he did as a kid. So that's another theory that I like to buy too, that Ben's always wearing a baseball shirt. And by extension, that means all of his aliens are wearing variations of baseball uniforms.
No more sugar. Give.
I don't have any.
Yeah, see, this is one of those scenes that's kind of unlike classic Ben, though. Like, this is just kind of a generic little kid trait. Oh, kids like eating candy and stuff. Although he does like sweets. Like in classic, he ate all that ice cream to the point where he got sick. And in Galactic Enforcers, he was eating chocolate a lot. And it could explain where Ben's hyperactivity comes from. But I don't know, like, my first ever watch through of this, I was like, that's not classic Ben, but it kind of is. Although this candy is just exposed in his pocket, it's got to be all melty and hairy and gross. Don't eat that, Ben.
Your butt is huge.
What did you say?
He said your butt is...
I heard him.
And Kevin jumps in to double down. Oh, I shouldn't find this funny. I don't know, I'm at a point where I'm just amused by it. But classic Ben's insults are more of just diminishing her to being non-human, like calling her a freak, or just dogpiling her with insults. Because as weird as it to say, like trying to insult someone by saying they have a big butt is more of like a sexual insult, which isn't really young Ben's style. But you can see this line right here, where they adjust Ben's torso to his static arm. They probably did that so they didn't have to keep drawing the Omnitrix over and over again, but they shouldn't have put a line right here.
With a butt that big, you probably aren't getting enough blood to your brain.
He's still going. Yeah, that's more of a classic insult, Ben. Like riffing off of that to continue to insult her because he knows it's antagonizing her, sure. But just straight off the bat saying like, yo, your butt is huge. Not sure young Ben would say that.
Where do you get off talking to your friends like that?
You do it.
I'm 10 years old. What's your excuse?
Oh, that is so fucking true. I feel like it's a subtle acknowledgement how they know, like, young Ben pretty much is just a selfish asshole. But seeing 15, 16-year-old Ben act like that, it's off-putting, especially since we've seen him mature out of that a handful of times. So I feel like that's a little writer's jab at them, lampshading Ben's personality also being like this at times.
Everything's not a game. Maybe you are just a kid.
Coming from Kevin, too. UA Season 2 is really making Kevin out to be a noble hero. In fact, UA as a whole, I'm really liking what they do with Kevin, which is why when he flips at the end of this episode, it's so, it's heartbreaking. And in young Ben's perspective, hearing that from Kevin, he probably has a bunch of complicated emotions towards that.
You think I don't know? When it's hero time, somebody could die.
This is also one of my favorite young Ben moments ever, and it's not even from Classic. A lot of really great lines in this episode. Like, this episode is just, it's so good. Let's just hope it ends good, too.
Maybe if I pretend everything's a big joke, I'll be able to do what I have to do.
And it makes a lot of sense for Ben's character, too. And real life in general. Like, if you're very nonchalant about things, it does make life seem a lot easier, especially during difficult trials. And as we hear Ben say in basic training,
people think I'm not paying attention, but I am.
Now, I wouldn't say that Ben always feels like this. Sometimes he genuinely is just a jerk and fucks around way too much more than he should. But there is a semblance of self-awareness in there. But for a 10-year-old to at least begin having this perspective, I think that's very honorable. But it's definitely not a 24/7 standard. He absolutely thinks everything's a big joke sometimes when he shouldn't.
Is that why you're so arrogant all the time?
No, I'm actually oblivious.
See, Teen Ben knows what's up.
Dumb, lame, weak. Guess this one's okay.
Of course he likes the strength one, but it's cool to see young Ben cycling through Teen Ben's Ultimatrix. Little interactions like that really makes this episode. Also, yeah, I see it. The Ultimatrix is black in the scene, we know. Also kind of looks like Ben's hand is resting on nothing, though.
I think we are.
And this Celestial Sapien is bigger than all the other ones. Now, it's been stated that this Celestial Sapien isn't like a significant one. Like, she's not their queen or like the head honcho or anything. She's just gigantic. But this shot is incredible too. This giant Celestial Sapien with like a ring of nebulous clouds surrounding her, holding a baby Celestial Sapien in her hands. This would make a great fighting arena too if there was a fighting Ben 10 game.
What's that in her hands?
And there it is. Now this is supposedly a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey. The Star Child, it is called. I really gotta see that movie at some point. I've heard so many great things about it. Have y'all seen 2001: A Space Odyssey before? Let me know what you think in the comments. Please don't spoil the movie for me. I just want to know if you liked it or not. One day I'll get around to watching it. I wonder why they even start off as babies to begin with though. And they're not just blinked into existence. I guess it's more evidence that Celestial Sapiens do have an attachment to some form of being mortal, or at least not full-on, like, incomprehensible gods, which is also why Ben can turn into one in the first place. So they have DNA, and they're born, and they start off as babies and are grown to a full size. But other than that, they're basically gods. But they do have a more mortal life cycle. Also, it's not stated in the episode, but Greg wanted a baby Celestial Sapien because when they're born, they don't have dual personalities, and thus by absorbing that DNA, DNA. Greg wouldn't have to worry about a celestial debate in order to use their powers, which is a creative solution. So Greg's whole plan: gather 5 legendary alien species, build a machine to absorb all of their power into himself, go on a quest to get the Map of Infinity, to get to the Forge of Creation, to absorb celestial sapien DNA. It's pretty elaborate, and he almost wins too. That's crazy. But also, if nothing's holding him back from warping reality, why aren't things just randomly changing? Babies have such crazy thoughts. Maybe that's why unexplainable events happen in everyday life, when it seems like reality just shifts. You guys ever get that feeling? Like something so random will happen in your life that it must be cosmically influenced in some manner. I'm not even that much of a believer in any type of supernatural things or religion, but wouldn't it be funny if those moments in life were caused because a baby celestial sapien was just thinking something random and nothing was holding it back from changing reality?
Where do baby alien X's come from?
Fantastic question. Can we please get an answer for that?
We're hit!
By what? I guess the wing is just fucking up again? Also, where's the hole that Ben chewed into it? In fact, how did they get unstuck?
Used to be?
Just a wipe transition? They got out with the power of the necessity to get to the next scene. I don't like that. In fact, them getting unstuck from the barrier could have been the rest of the episode, and then from this point forward could be part 2. Like, this episode really should have been a 2-parter. There's so many great concepts in here to be so short.
Move! I'll land it.
Yeah, that's a very classic Ben thing to do. He wants to help out and handle the situation, but he has no idea what he's gonna do. Like, what if Kevin was just like, sure, kid, take the controls. Good luck. The nebulous ring is missing in this shot. I think they should have added more celestial sapiens with her body shape splattered around too, so she wouldn't look so different. They're both forearms. That's so cool, seeing them be the same alien. I don't think we ever got that in the future stuff with Classic. The closest we got was Ben 10,000 and Kenny both using Accelerate, but this is such a rare occurrence, so I'm glad we got to see it.
I was going for upgrade. I was going for big chill.
And that interaction too, them bonding over their mistransformations.
How much stronger do I get when I'm older?
And they gave Young Forearms a different voice too. Young Forearms being voiced by John, while Teen Forearms is voiced by Dee. John does a pretty good job at emulating Richard McGonagall though.
Is there anything I'm not going to get blamed for today? And they say I talk too much.
Incoming!
And it's Greg! Crazy how after all of this, they still arrive at basically the same time. What's he doing all the way over here? Like, how did he send those Agrigor bots? Like, what the fuck was that whole scene? I'm not gonna get over this. So he's shooting little blots of air, but when they land, they're like water. They changed elements in between shots. Or like, is he turning the air into water? I feel like Greg can low-key control the elements. Like how he was able to open and close that hole in Deep, and also use light constructs in Perplexuhedron. So it's like he gets the 5 powers of the aliens, and is also able to use them in special ways, maybe due to his osmosine abilities? Or this is just an error. Water's pretty transparent too. I like that. Oh, see, when it cuts back to him, he's shooting the water out of his hands. But just going from this shot to a cut of Gwen. See, there's even water coming down mid-frame when they switch shots. So it's just confusing. You can also see on the edge here, the warp effect is making the picture come off the boundary a little bit. Just for a second, though.
I can't imagine how you managed to beat me here, Tennyson.
I can't either. I really can't. But they did it.
I'm going to kill you and take the ultimate prize.
Aw, shit's about to go down. Oh, he looks so badass. It's really just the head that sells this design. The body could use a little bit of work, but I love what they're doing all the way up here. Now, did the Celestial Sapien feel that? His punch is so strong, it sends a shockwave ripple and changes the shape of the Celestial Sapien hand. Like, for a multitude of obvious reasons, that shouldn't be possible.
Leave her alone!
Oh, I heard some of John's regular voice coming out of that line delivery. He's so powerful. Although, as much as I love smoke animation, it doesn't make sense for dust to be clouding up around forearms when he lands. There's no material on here that would be causing this smoke.
It's over. Should have picked a flyer.
Not just a flyer. He should have been like Way Big or Eye Guy or Frankenstrike.
Stinkfly.
Now, as cool as it is to see Stinkfly return, Stinkfly going up against Ultimate Greg, it's really not a worthy matchup. He looks very similar to his classic series self too. He's just drawn with that UA style of shapes and shading. But they've done a pretty good job with all the aliens.
How did you?
As if he would tell you. That wing sound effect sounds a bit similar to old Stinkfly. It's pretty hard to hear.
Huh?
Fire!
Yes!
All
Oh, no transformation though. Ultimate Swampfire has the worst sequences. They didn't even do the ring this time. It's just a flash.
Just a copy of Wildvine.
First off, Stinkfly doesn't have his gloves on. And second, more of UAF humor where they try to lampshade what the fans talk about. But what makes this scene truly disappointing is this.
Remember the time Wildvine did this?
And it's like Wildvine probably could do that. He should have said, remember the last time Wildvine did this, and then shoot out his explosive blue flame attack that he did in Final Battle Part 2. Because I'm pretty sure Wildvine could do something like this. And how are these seeds growing out of the Celestial Sapien hand? Also, Ultimate Swampfire's vines look very different from Swampfire's regular vines. In fact, they look very similar to Charmcaster's vines and hit them where they live. Oh, and that kind of sucks too. Stinkfly's shooting out like blue lasers? I want to say it just looks like that because it's too far away for them to give any intricacy to it. But for one, it's blue, not green. And for two, they even back it out with a laser sound effect. That's not great. Stinkfly should be shooting goo. And that's it. That's it for Ben. Makes sense with him though because, you know, he's still 10-year-old Ben. But this, Teen Ben barely got a hand in there, and he didn't go back to base Swampfire form. This is a very disappointing sequence. You got two Bens teaming up, and they choose some low excitement aliens, and they get tanked by Greg way too easily. Even if they were gonna be defeated by Greg, it would have been great to see them put up more of a fight, or even fight together, you know, get some alien combo attacks in there. Maybe they both fight as the same alien again. I don't know. I'm not buying it. Dwayne even said that if they went to the chrono randomization barrier and they got even more Bens, they still wouldn't have been enough to defeat Ultimate Greg. And I don't buy it. I feel like they barely put up a fight and got defeated way too easily. I don't care that Greg can defeat them. I care that he did it in this method. Yeah, fuck him.
It's timed out.
Oh, and he still has to worry about the recharge. I'm glad they wrote that in.
You can still stop him. You can absorb my Omnitrix like you did before.
So young Ben put that idea in Kevin's head. He probably wouldn't have done it without him, so he needed to be there. Also, the shading line on one of his buttons is green instead of red. In fact, it's green for multiple frames.
No, I better go with the A game.
Oh shit, so Kevin's gonna absorb Ben's Ultimatrix. I remember that being so hyped too. You could just walk right into that ball. Earlier, that ball was floating like super high into the air. It's very kind of the Celestial Sapien Mother to lower it for Greg to walk in.
Finally. Hands off the baby. Kevin?
It's Ultimate Kevin! So we get Jet Ray's Neuroshocks, Brainstorm's Electricity, Swampfire's Fire, and then combine together for a quick shock. He finishes him off quick, although it's smart for him to get at Greg the second he has an opening. 'Cause I feel like there's a handful of times where they knock Greg down, and then they allow him to get back up. Here, Kevin puts him down immediately, and then starts absorbing him.
Take your powers too.
Wrath's Claw is miscolored right here in this frame, though. And this absorbing energy looks different than ever before. It's not electrical or some type of glowing green aura. Maybe it's because of the machine that Greg used to get the Andromeda 5 in the first place. Because he absorbed their entire body. Consciousness, physical form, powers and all. So this is probably the Andromeda 5 shifting into Kevin's body. It's kind of disappointing he's just a Flash, though. We don't get to see him unmorph.
That's enough, Kevin!
And that's it for Greg. He's defeated right here, never to be seen again. Even if it was going to happen this way, I feel like they should have slowed it down more. Really play into the drama of it. Because he's been the big bad for like a season and a half, and he's taken win after win. I just feel like he went down not too easily, but just thematically too fast. This doesn't feel like a payoff.
Absorbing energy makes Osmosians lose control.
Well, I like being out of control.
Oh, Kevin, you're throwing away everything.
I should absorb the Alien X power from myself.
Oh, yes, do it. Man, that'd be wild. I just feel like this episode had so much hype, and we're not really getting a big payoff. We're getting a payoff by like, okay, they're wrapping up the story. Not like, oh wow, what a great resolution, you know?
I'm the one who gets turned into a monster. I'm the one nobody ever trusts or cares about.
That's a lot of Kevin's real emotions coming out, though. This is the third time that he's mutated. And as much as he's part of the trio, you can tell they still don't 100% trust him with certain things. Granted, Kevin does still act like a criminal sometimes too, so his untrustworthiness is valid. Well, I shouldn't say they don't trust him. They understand that he still has his core habits and personality, and he still lives his life in a morally gray area. He's just not evil anymore, and that's enough for them. But now it's coming out of Kevin in all the wrong ways, because he never deals with his emotions. He never wants to talk about his feelings, and the times that he does, he immediately rejects it. This is what happens when you aren't honest with your own internal struggles, folks. You quite literally turn into a monster.
You've always been a jerk. You're too busy feeling sorry for yourself.
Young Ben just put Kevin in his place. Kevin's eyebrow is black here and then flickers back to green.
Maybe I'll try it your way, kid.
So that resistance right there. I think he's able to resist a little bit because he's remembering what Paradox said to him.
Things will get worse before they get better, Kevin. I'm sorry. Try to remember who your friends are.
Also, where is he going? They're still in the Forge of Creation. He even left his ship behind. The map of Infinity is gone too. Maybe he took the map and is escaping with it. There's too many loose threads right now. What a frickin' tonal whiplash.
A problem for another day.
Yeah, we're out of time in the episode. I like whenever we see Paradox use his goggles, even though he clearly doesn't need to.
I'm gonna forget everything that happened, aren't I?
You'll think it was a dream.
What about Kevin?
I'll take care of him.
What? Alright, so I'm just gonna say it. Forge of Creation is one of my favorite episodes of all time. But it's definitely just because of all the fan service. I'm a sucker for shit like that. But it only really works when it has the right kind of plot to weave it through. And I don't think this episode does. Best I can give this plot is a 3. It gets points because of all the cool things we've had in it. The interactions between the trio and young Ben, the interactions between young Ben and his older self, the little commentary on the differences between their eras, and the concept of the Forge of Creation in general, along with the fact that we got Alien X again, even though he didn't really do anything. There's just a lot of cool stuff and a lot of hype in this episode. But as for the plot, this is the resolution to the Greg arc, really. I never feel like we got that final ultimate Greg scene, you know, something that makes him worthy of being ultimate Greg. All the fights barely felt like any kind of interaction, and at the end, it just had so many loose threads hanging, and they do get answered in the Dwayne forums, but for the context of the episode, it's like everything is pretty great until the last 2 or 3 minutes, and then all of a sudden, it's totally different. Greg's story, it's just over. That's it. He's done. We literally never see him again. Map of Infinity, where to go? Who knows? Kevin defeating Greg by absorbing his power, I dig it though. That's pretty good. That's a good solution. But Kevin doing an instant 180 when he absorbed power, that should have been kind of a power creep thing. Maybe he absorbs that power and he's still fine, but he's stuck in that form. And then over the next episode or 2, he starts going crazy. Half because of the realistic situation that he is mutated yet again for a 3rd, and if you count the OV continuity retroactively 4th time in his life. The struggles of being in that mutated state, combined with Osmosian energy driving people crazy. It was definitely set up. We got mention after mention after mention of how this works, but still, just seeing it in the episode, it feels very forced. So this was a great episode, really cool concepts, really cool plot, but it completely drops the ball with the ending. That, yeah, it kind of ruins it, doesn't it? Characterization, I'll give it a 4 though. I always felt like they didn't really do a good job with classic Ben, but upon doing these breakdowns and really observing Ben's personality, I think they did fine. Like, there's moments where it really does feel like classic Ben, and then moments where it just kind of feels like a generic 10-year-old. But then again, classic was kind of like that too. Ben would slip in and out of his personality, and what consistent basis are you even trying to plant classic Ben's persona on, in which UA classic Ben would start to deviate? There's really broad strokes of a basis. I think they got a lot of things right, but they got enough wrong where something feels off with his characterization. But the trio were great, best that they could be in this episode, but Greg, he really fell short as a villain. He started off pretty weak. He started getting some hype towards the end of season 1 and beginning of season 2. I was really starting to respect him as a character, but this episode just dumps all of that. And while he makes a good antagonist as a character, he's really not that great. But Paradox, always a pleasure. I don't think they've ever screwed up writing Paradox. And Azimuth was pretty good in this episode too, even though he was just kind of exposition. But yeah, characterization was a 4. I think they did all right. Visuals, I've been trapped between 3 and 4, but I think I'm gonna give them that 4. The animation really isn't that great in this episode. Now, it's not a season finale, so it doesn't get that automatic treatment, but it certainly feels like one. It's an arc finale. But despite the animation being kind of whack, the concept of the visuals really does make up for a lot of it. Seeing young Ben again in general was dope. They did their best trying to mimic that Heat Blast transformation. Seeing the forearms just standing next together. Ultimate Kevin's design was awesome. Battling on the palms of a celestial sapien in a nebula outside of the universe, Shit's crazy. I dig it, but it's not perfect, and things felt very weirdly paced and rushed. Maybe a 4 is kind of generous, I don't know. It's tricky, because I also feel like if I gave it a 3, it would be too weak. Like, there's too many cool things in this episode for it to get a 3. Importance is a 5. This concludes the Greg arc and starts the Ultimate Kevin arc, and even so, the hype of a Timeline Ben team-up, it's too good. You never want to miss those kind of episodes. Entertaining is a solid 5. Like, a lot of the flaws with the episode only come from retrospect, but the whole ride is quite the journey. It's a 5 in entertainment. The fan service pays off. It keeps you engaged, and it's really cool. And it's cool to see all the interactions and references to the classic series. But that's gonna leave this episode off at a 21 out of 25. I'm not gonna lie, I thought it would have been slightly lower. Like, this episode's very much a mixed bag, but it's better than people give it credit for. So a 21 out of 25 is pretty fair for this. Now let's move on to the final thoughts. So remember this line?
The Ultimatrix has scanned all 5 of the aliens, and I'm going to use their powers to save them.
Ben never actually used any of the Andromeda aliens against Ultimate Greg. Granted, he used them on his quests here and there, but I was expecting some type of big showdown of him using the aliens against Ultimate Greg, maybe even in a Back with a Vengeance style sequence where he's switching between all of them. Maybe that's just my expectations. Can't really fault the episode for it, but it would have been cool. This episode was also one wrath short from hitting every single counter in one go. Maybe we'll get an episode like that in the future. Also, with both Bens mistransforming into forearms, it's assuming they transformed around the same time, and it kind of reminds me of the two Bens Omnitrices syncing in the Omniverse episode Ben Again.
Well, if activated at the same moment, your two Omnitrices might synchronize.
And for last week's poll, I asked y'all if you saw the film Cube, and if you didn't, are you interested in seeing it? For an indie film from the late 90s, it's no surprising that most people haven't seen it. But I am surprised that 32% don't even want to. Maybe it's not your thing, but I still think it's a very interesting film. It's much more psychological thriller than straight up horror, and it gives you more appreciation for the episode based on the film. For this week, I want to ask y'all, with the remaining 5 classic aliens from the OG 10, if you could have one more appear in this episode, which one would you want to see? Sorry, Ghost Freak doesn't count because Ben would have lost him by then, but let me know what you think in the community tab when this video goes live. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And as always, keep it fizzy.